Hello, this is the English lesson for Year 5 on Thursday, the 11th of June. Okay, now before we start with our plot point 2, I just want to spend a few minutes recapping on what I asked you to do yesterday. So what you can see in front of me now is a recap on yesterday's plot point 1, and I have copy and pasted the 3 mini parts that I modelled yesterday so that we've now got a paragraph together. And I'm going to read through it once more now because there were a couple of little bits yesterday that I thought, I need to change somehow because there's something that's slightly bugging me about it. Okay, and it's always good actually to have a bit of time and space between you writing something and then looking back at it. Okay, so once I've talked through my paragraph and added a couple of little changes, I'll then maximise it so that you can see it more clearly. Okay. Outside, the bright summer day darkened without warning. Plump raindrops began to tumble from the heavy clouds. A gentle pitter-patter which then gave way to a ferocious sheet of water pelting viciously against the windows like sticks beaten on a drum. I need to revisit that sentence. There's something about the punctuation that isn't pleasing me at the moment. I like the idea, but there's something about the punctuation, so I'm going to carry on. So I must come back to that sentence. Inside, the TV was blaring. A half-empty mug of cold coffee stood precariously on the arm of the worn settee, and a blanket-covered mound lay snoring and drooling. Heather picked up the remote, anger boiling inside her, and jabbed off the off switch. Heather bit her lip. Oh, straight away, I wonder whether you can tell me what I don't like about the start of that sentence. Are you thinking to yourself that I've got a problem with the fact that I've started 2 consecutive sentences with Heather? Yeah, you'd be absolutely right. I don't like that. So I'm going to come back to the start of that sentence and see what I can rework. Heather bit her lip and breathed in slowly, trying her best to not let her bubbling anger erupt. Her eyes shifted left and right, taking in the disorganised chaos that was her family. Magazines and schoolwork discarded on the floor, this morning's encrusted breakfast bowls left on the coffee table, and random items of school uniforms strewn across the backs of the chairs. And that was yesterday's plot point 1. So, what did I say I needed to go back to? I need to go back to the second sentence because I like it, but there's something about the grammar that is bugging me. And then this bit here, wasn't it? Because I don't want to start off 2 sentences with Heather. That's a bit rubbish. So I could either choose the first one or I could choose the second one. Let me think. Okay, so I've just made a couple of amendments, in red. Notice here, plump raindrops began to tumble from the heavy clouds. I've used a semicolon now because I felt that the amount of information in the next part of my clause after that comma, it was too worded. Okay, and also it's still linking back to the previous. So the fact that the gentle pitter-patter became stronger rain coming down is still related to the raindrops beginning to tumble. Okay. Plump raindrops began to tumble from the heavy clouds, a gentle pitter-patter. And if you notice as well, before, I think pitter was in red, wasn't it? Because it didn't recognise the word. But now that I should have put this bit in red actually, I've made it a hyphenated word, pitter with a hyphen, patter. And it's got rid of that red squiggle, but I've not put that in red, so that I didn't realise. Anyway, a gentle pitter-patter which quickly gave way to a ferocious sheet of water pelting viciously against the windows like sticks beaten on a drum. And I'm happy with that. It's got a nice simile there, hasn't it? Like sticks beaten on a drum. If you imagine a drummer, there you go. Free sound effect for you. Inside, the TV was blaring. A half-empty mug of cold coffee stood precariously, although actually I wish I'd put balanced now, but never mind, on the arm of the worn settee, and a blanket-covered mound lay snoring and drooling. Now, it's up to the reader to decide whether that is a pet, a child, another grown-up. I'm not mentioning that yet, am I? Heather picked up the remote, anger boiling inside her, and jabbed the off switch. Now I've just basically switched around the order here, desperately trying to not let her bubbling anger erupt. She bit her lip and inhaled slowly and deeply. Instead of saying take a deep breath in, I've changed it to inhaled, so using the verb. Her eyes shifted left and right, taking in the disorganised chaos, etc., etc. Okay, so I'm reasonably happy with that now. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I followed the criteria according to the original story with the structures and the sort of content, but I've put in my own ideas for sure, and that's what I asked you to do yesterday. Okay, so what I'd like you to do now, before we continue, pause me and read your work out aloud from yesterday. Now, one final thing before we start with plot point 2. If you have a look at your vocabulary table from yesterday, these are just a few suggestions, okay? I did say yesterday not to write too many things down. For squally, I could have had a whole long list. A whole long list for humble, but actually when I was thinking about the humble fire, a lot of the words suggested as synonyms wouldn't have been the right words for the job, so I've only put down modest for the time being. So if you want to have a quick look and compare what you found out with some of the ideas that I've got, you might want to magpie some of mine and add them to yours. So pause me here, have a quick look, and then we'll move on. Let's take a look at plot point 2 now then. Okay, so plot point 2 is going to be, I think it's going to have a couple of extra sentences compared to plot point 1. It's slightly longer, okay? And in terms of content, what does this plot point cover? Well, it covers the arrival of a mysterious object. In the case of the story One Chance, it's a lottery ticket. Okay, or a golden card. It also covers the intrigue of one of the characters. So the sort of, what's the word? It slipped my mind. The curiosity of one of the characters for the arrival of this mysterious object. And it also covers that character already starting to think about what they would do if they were to win or if they were to have that wish granted. Okay? Now, as you can see, I'm just going to go forwards because you can read this off your own PDF file. Okay? I've copy and pasted it from, I've just put the plot 2 together. Okay? We're not going to worry too much. In this story that we're doing at the moment, as I'm modelling, I'm not going too far away in terms of ideas from the original story because I want us to really focus about imitating, so copying and practicing the sort of structures that another author has got in place for us to practice them, to hone in on our skills, and to think of a little bit of our own ideas, but not straying too far from the original. Your chance will be at the end of this whole modelling process after the 5 plot points to do your own wishing story of your choice. Okay, so in terms of the actual golden lottery ticket, that part I'm going to keep exactly the same. Okay, also you'll notice again today that there are words in bold. You have another page where it has got plot point 2 in your PDF file, and again you can use the online Collins dictionary stroke thesaurus and just try to get a couple of synonyms for each of those words, and if you manage one antonym then that's fine. Okay, so pause me now and have a go at that before I start modelling. Okay? Okay, I've taken the first 2 sentences. Suddenly, the letterbox jangled and there was a solitary but decisive knock on the door. Hope, the Labrador, barked. So, very short and sweet to begin with. So, what do these symbols mean that I've got here? Okay. Just a heads up, Year 5. we're going to be, or I'm going to be referring to these symbols in the next academic year quite a bit. So it's nice that you're getting a little bit of a taster for them. So this one is to do with adverbials, okay? Suddenly is our example of an adverbial here, and it's called a fronted adverbial because it comes at the front of a sentence. However, it doesn't have to go there. We could say, for example, the letterbox suddenly jangled, or the letterbox jangled suddenly. Okay, so we don't always have to have an adverb in or an adverbial phrase in a fixed place. Okay, this symbol here, we've got a line, comma. Okay, that is to represent sentence structure. Now here, if we have a look at this one here, Hope, comma, the Labrador, comma, barked. This is punctuation for parenthesis. Okay, and here the Labrador is an embedded clause. Okay, it's a tiny embedded clause. Okay, if we were to take that out, the rest of the sentence would make sense. So if we just said Hope barked, it would make sense, and we get the idea that Hope's a dog anyway because of the verb barked. Essentially, what is in between the two commas, and we talked about this quite a bit earlier on in the year, is essentially giving more information to the reader, but it isn't strictly necessary, okay? And we're going to have a go at seeing if we can get a small embedded clause into our work today. I've put this symbol here again for sound, simply because we've got the jangling of the letterbox and knock and barking, okay? So I'm going to carry on with that theme, okay? So it looks like there's a lot there to contend with 3 symbols there, but actually we'll do this really easily. So just give me a few seconds and I'll show you what I've come up with. Disturbing the silence, the doorbell chimed dully, followed by one single thump on the door. Hope, who had been curled up in her bed, barked and ran to the door to investigate. So with my embedded clause, I've ended up starting off my embedded clause with who, which was one of the things that I'd asked you to try to do last week, wasn't it, in the wish granter? So it's a little bit longer, but if you end up doing an embedded clause that doesn't start with who and it's a lot shorter, then that's not going to make it wrong. I've nabbed barked, okay, so I've kept that the same, but I've added an action to it, okay, to make it my own. So remember what I say, magpie what you can, but make it work so that it's still your own work rather than just copying. I might come back and change this at some point, but for the moment I'm going to leave it. Disturbing the silence. Now with adverbial phrases, they don't all have to be like suddenly, all of a sudden, firstly, then, next. Of course you can use those. In narratives, they get a bit clunky and a bit boring. I referred in plot point 1 to the house being quite noisy with the TV blaring and that to begin with, didn't I? And that Mum, Heather, jabbed on the off switch. So that's why I'm referring to disturbing the silence. The doorbell chimed dully. I'm remembering when I used to go to my nan's when I was young, and her doorbell, oh my gosh, the batteries were hardly ever changed in it, and it was like do 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 do. It was that tune, except you could always tell when the batteries were on their last legs in it. And that's what I'm just thinking of there, where it goes really flat. I wonder if I should have put chimed flatly. Again, I might come back to that, but for the moment I'm going to keep it. Followed by one single thump on the door. Okay. I'm going to ask you to pause me there. I'm going to do a part 2 of this lesson. So pause me here. You write your own 2 first sentences and then go on to part 2 for us to continue. Okay, see you in a bit.